Hi, David. How are you?
Good. How are you? How's it going?
I was doing great until they just ran all the picks that John and Kyle have made in the first round, and now I'm in a bad mood.
Thought you were about to say I was doing great until I started talking to you.
God, how depressing was that? Good thing they're good in the mid rounds. The third round, fifth round, they're amazing. But the first round, oh boy.
I
Uh,
wrote an article today that came out just talking about the draft strategy, and you just kind of went back down memory lane to see what they had done in the past. And I had forgotten that John Lynch traded 6 times in 2017. I didn't forget though that the two first round picks were Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster. And then one of the comments was that's an iconic first round. That somebody was like, yeah, iconically bad.
right.
And well,
Uh,
what's really crazy though? You put it all in perspective. The 49ers, that their first draft with this regime, Shanahan and Lynch, their two first rounders were spent on Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster. And then their biggest blockbuster trade was to get Trey Lance. Despite the fact that all three of those moves ended up not giving them hardly anything, this team is still as good as it is. And to me, that's amazing. And it's a testament to the organizational structure they've built because that's allowed them to be so successful in the middle rounds and the later rounds, obviously with Purdy. And I think that's probably where the hay is going to be made this year as well.
Yeah, they got Kittle in the fifth round of that first draft in 17, Fred Warner in the third round the next year in 18, and then they had quite a few in 19 as well. But um, us just get to Brandon Aiyuk situation, David. And Amon-Ra St. Brown re-signs what we thought initially when the first reports was a massive contract extension. You have to look at what is really fully guaranteed and not just guaranteed. Guarantees aren't all even. So when you look at what Amon Ra got, what's coming, and Justin Jefferson may not be an exact comp. Jamar Chase, the fifth-year option with Mike Brown and Tobin in Cincinnati. Um, for the 49ers to craft a contract, you'd think that it would be reasonable and Ryan Williams would accept his agent. What are we looking at, do you think, months out for Brandon Aiyuk? You have any idea?
Well, you're exactly right in terms of the fully guaranteed money versus the average per year. Everybody gets so caught up in average per year, but especially at the receiver position, it's a lot of fluff. And it didn't start with Tyreek Hill, but he's at the top of the average per year. And the only reason he made it to 30 million per year is because they just tack on this non-guaranteed amount to the last season. For Tyreek, it was like 44 million, and he's very, very unlikely to play on that. So what Amon-Ra St. Brown's representation did yesterday was the same exact thing. They wanted to get the 30 million, and they tacked on just a year of fluff at the end to
41.
get it to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 41. It was a lot. So the fully guaranteed money matters a whole lot more. Now Tyreek is still number one in fully guaranteed money, so that still paces the market. It's 52.5 million. When I did my contract proposal for Brandon Aiyuk about a month ago, I thought that this might get to the 50s. I think it's time for somebody to at least get close to Tyreek Hill. Plus, the 49ers have this crowded cap situation. They've got to pay Purdy next year. The tool to be able to keep the cap hits low in the near term is actually to give him a lot of fully guaranteed money, to give him a big signing bonus, because you could prorate that up to 5 years. And what they did with Bosa and what they've done with a lot of guys, the big deals lately, is that they not only give that guaranteed signing bonus, a year later they give a guaranteed option bonus, and they stretch that out another 5 years. So the proration goes out to 6 years. And if you get a second one of those bonuses, it could be up to 7 years. So it's like this series of big accordions, and you could stretch out the cap hit. So I do think that it makes sense for when they finally can get Brandon Ayuk's deal done. It does make sense to give him a whole lot of fully guaranteed money. He's only missed one game since his rookie season, so he kind of just perfectly fits that strategy of being willing to pay a lot now so you could stretch the cap hit into the future, so that way you could fit everybody, including Brock Purdy, onto the books next year.
David Lombardi is joining us. Talk some NFL draft, but talking Brandon Aiyuk right now. So just in terms of the way you're looking at it, because it seems like with all these signings, and not only these ones that have become recent, but Deebo and Metcalf and McLaurin signed for a certain amount. Then Devontae Smith signs with Philly, and then, like you said, it looked like maybe this one blow out of the water. But now that we're starting to see some of the numbers, Amon-Ra St. Brown's isn't quite as big. it seems like all the comps that Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers need are there. I know that Jefferson and Chase are going to be up, but I think they're in a different stratosphere. So don't they have all the information needed? And I think one of the key things, David, and you were at the press conference with John, he cited the fact that a lot of times they've gotten these deals done in July, August, September for these extensions to the players that they wanted to keep. Knicks even went until September 6th, and they don't want to do that again so that he doesn't, go into the season late. So he said that he would love to get this deal done sooner rather than later. So right now, is there a specific thing that's holding it up? Like is the Aiyuk camp just asking for too much? Do we know that?
I they're obviously asking for more than what the 49ers have been willing to give so far. The one thing that John Lynch did say that leads me to believe that this could be different than the Bosa situation and the Deebo Samuel situation is that he very openly acknowledged that they would like to get something done sooner. That I don't think the 49ers particularly enjoyed the fact that it's been documented. I think that performance suffered from both Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, at least a little bit, because for Deebo it was only a couple days of training camp. For Nick it was all of training camp, and I think that the team is really really wanting to kick down the door and win a Super Bowl, and to do that you would like to avoid any distraction possible. I do think you're right that a lot of the parameters have been set. I think last year with Nick Bosa, the 49ers dug in, and ultimately that didn't really benefit them. Nick Bosa signed for $34 million a year with $88 million fully guaranteed. I mean, every single metric of that contract blew away anything else for a defensive player before it. So it's not like the 49ers really benefited from waiting longer. So I agree with you. I think that some of the signs here point to this being done sooner. But the 49ers are going to have to move, and Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to have to move. That's just how deals work, right? You have to find that middle ground, and I think at this point they're still not near that middle ground.
The hot topic around the NFL now is because of this contract situation with Aiyuk looming, that Brandon Aiyuk may be traded today. I don't think there's any way in hell that'll happen unless you can get up into the top 7 to get one of those top 3 wide receivers. David, what are you hearing? Does it make any sense based on everything you're saying? I understand the contract's going to be a big number, but does it make any sense from a football standpoint or even a financial standpoint to seriously think about trading Brandon Aiyuk today?
You would have to get an extremely valuable return, what we say a king's ransom. That was what we talked about 2 seasons ago with Deebo Samuel, because I think it's a simple proposition. You look at this, and the 49ers, again, they're trying to kick the door down. They're trying to win a Super Bowl next year. This is as win now mode as I've ever seen. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the best receivers in football. He fits not only your offensive system and your quarterback perfectly. He's got that rapport with Brock Purdy, but also fits the culture of the team really well, because you drafted him and he worked through some issues early on, and he found his way to become that number 1 target. I mean, that's what you want to set an example, right? And they've set great examples with Kittle, with Fred Warner, with Deebo Samuel, with Nick Bosa. They've paid those guys before. So everything, makes perfect sense for the 49ers to have Brandon Aiyuk on this football team. And if you were to take him away, you would have to get so much in return that you could make a compelling argument that you could use that return to make the team better in another area that would outweigh the loss of Brandon Aiyuk, which, based on all the stuff that I just listed, it would be extremely hard to do. And even if you were able to get a top half of the first-round draft pick, like the 49ers got for DeForest Buckner, for example, in 2020, I thought that was an amazing trade return that they got for DeForest Buckner. Even then, you still have to make sure you get the pick right. And that's no guarantee, as we saw with the 49ers and Buckner and Kinlaw back in 2020. So the only possible path I would see is that somebody comes out of the woodwork and is like, fine, we really want Brandon Aiyuk. Here's your top 12 pick or something like that, which hasn't been the trend, by the way. These trades have been going for a lot less, these players. But somebody says they do that. And then the 49ers turn around and get an offensive lineman that is plug and play, because that was the worst performing area of the team last year was pass protection, and they're able to improve the pass protection more than what they would lose from Aiyuk at receiver, and that's a huge ask out of any new offensive lineman. So to me, it just doesn't line up to make a whole lot of sense for the 49ers, but that's the one scenario where I do think that they might consider it, right? But geez, it really, that's a lot of ifs, right? And whenever there's that many ifs, you kind of just want to put it to rest.
David Lombardi has joined us, of course, from The Athletic. Make sure you read his great stuff as we get you ready for the NFL draft. So long term, or in the next couple of years, because I know Deebo's got an out in his contract coming up too, do the 49ers want their money allocated to two $25+ million receivers?
Long term, well, it's not set up to be that way long term because Deebo Samuel after this season's only under. Well, I think he's only under contract for 2 more years total, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not set up to be that way long term. I think they're gonna cross a bridge in all likelihood next off season with Deebo Samuel. They'll see where they're at. Two, it's not, the average per year if Brandon Aiyuk does sign a contract this off season and Deebo Samuel sticks around. The average per year might be high on both of them, but it's not like the cap is going to be allocated in that way to both of them. In my contract proposal for Aiyuk, they can lower his cap hit from $14 million to $8 million this year with an extension because you spread the money out. They could probably keep it at like $12 million in each of the 2 years following that. So you wouldn't be at $20 million plus for 2 guys. Once Aiyuk's number would theoretically go up in the later years of the contract, who knows where Deebo Samuel would be. It would require another contract for Deebo Samuel, a third contract with the 49ers for that to make sense. So I don't think that – I think a lot of people are tossing that around, though. You can't have 2 $20 million receivers. Well, who says you can't? I think there already are a couple teams that have done that now in the NFL. And plus, that's just an average number. That's not the actual cap allocation. They could definitely play financial Tetris to make it work around Brock Purdy's contract if they wanted to.
A lot of talk on social media about Deebo today. I go back a couple of years ago when Deebo and his negotiation obviously was much more contentious. He asked for a trade, and what they were offered back was a top 10 pick. It was literally the 10th overall pick in the draft from Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, but the Jets wanted Deebo and the 49ers' second round pick. So it wasn't like they were giving it up. Does it make any sense to move Deebo today or at some point this weekend, David? And financially, you laid out where they could keep both wide receivers. And what would be the return coming back the other way if they made Deebo Samuel available?
Well, that's the question. I think, again, you would have to have a considerable return. I wouldn't expect it to be as big as the return for Brandon Aiyuk, but if you did trade Deebo Samuel, the pluses would be you'd clear about $39 million. That's what you owe him over the next 2 years. So the positives for a team acquiring Deebo Samuel would be that they would get him at about 2 years, $40 million, $39 million to be exact. So that'd be, I think, a good rate for Deebo Samuel. And the 49ers would clear that much, and salary cap room that's unused carries over from season to season. So it'd make your financial situation to pay Brock Purdy and keep a lot of the rest of the roster, including Brandon Aiyuk, around it, to make that a lot simpler over the next couple of years. That being said, you're not just playing a long-term game here for the 49ers. In fact, you're probably focused on the short term right now, given how painfully close you've been to winning the Super Bowl. And Deebo Samuel is a really important part of the offensive structure. I do believe that Brandon Aiyuk fits better with Brock Purdy than Deebo Samuel. I think Purdy, with the intermediate routes and the precision of how he plays the quarterback position, I think there's a reason why his rapport with Brandon Aiyuk is probably better than any other receiver on this roster. But Deebo's still valuable to the 49ers in the here and now. So to be moved off of their position with him, keeping him, they would have to be offered something more than a mid-round pick. And to me, when I look at what teams might be offering, this is just me speculating, I would think that a mid-round pick would be what the rest of the league would find 2 years of Deebo Samuel at $20 million per year worth. And I'm really not sure that would be enough for the 49ers right now, because they're in a position where they need to keep the forces to try to.
David Lombardi joined us. We're talking NFL draft. Read his great stuff in The Athletic. Make sure you're following him at Lombardi himself In regards to 31, I mean, what do you think they do tonight? Do you have any thoughts? Move up, stay, move down? Receiver, we've heard. Offensive line, as you just pointed out, we've heard. Corner, they could go. They could go in a number of different directions. They love taking defensive linemen. What do you think?
I think that it's important that they can go in a number of different directions, and they built that optionality through their free agency. They made sure to plug very specific holes in free agency because, free agency is more of a what you see is what you get proposition. It's more expensive, but still, you plug those holes so you raise the floor in free agency. So that way, especially when you're not picking until the very end of the first round, who knows what's going to happen over the first 30 picks? I mean, it becomes a total crapshoot after 4 picks, right? So nobody knows who's going to be off the board. Nobody knows who's going to offer what. Well, a lot's going to happen between now and 31. So I think they're best off taking a swing at the best player that is available, that comes to them at 31, because you're swinging for ceiling at this point. And again, I think that the real hay in this draft for the 49ers is going to be made in those middle rounds. That's what they've done over the years. So it wouldn't shock me if 31 is one of those spots where if there's still a quarterback on the board, and the 49ers obviously don't need a quarterback, other teams might want to slip into that first round to get the quarterback under the fifth year option potential, right? So Bo Nix is still available. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody wanted to move up from that second round into the first round, and the 49ers could score a very, very valuable trade, and they could stock up even more in the mid rounds. And probably wouldn't be all too popular with fans. They would be frustrated that the 49ers didn't pick anybody at the end of the night. But as far as the value play goes, trying to spruce up the meat of that draft, which is going to make the money for the 49ers here, I don't think that would be a terrible play. So even that would be on the table, in my opinion.
Great stuff. Thanks, David, man. Great stuff as always. I know you'll be down there tonight, and we'll speak soon. We appreciate the